Hello and welcome. In this video I will talk about how to read academic texts. The first point that I want to get across is that simply reading a text is not the same as studying a text. Reading academic literature, whether it is bioinformatics, sociology or philosophy, is not like reading any piece of writing like novels, news, blog posts or the IKEA magazine. It is perfectly possible to read academic literature in the same way, but you won't get much out of it. Reading academic literature requires a completely different mindset if it is to be effective. It's not like reading for pleasure or simply gathering factual information, but requires careful attention to detail, like a detective solving a crime. This doesn't mean that you should approach it in a cold and rational manner, but merely that you should be vigilant and observe the social dynamics at play in a text. To formulate a proper reading strategy, you should make it clear for yourself why and for what purpose are you reading a particular text. Although this might not seem the case, there can be many different reasons for picking up an academic text. You could, for instance, be reading the text as background material to a debate that you're interested in. Here, the familiarity with the topic is important, as it will determine how you can approach the text and how long it will take you to read it. It could also be that you're reading it for general interest. Not all academic reading that you do as students should be directly linked to your coursework. Sometimes wandering around the library and picking up random books is a good way to get inspired and discover something new. Most of the time, however, the explicit purpose of reading academic texts is to obtain knowledge about something. It is often assumed that by reading academic literature, we somehow gain knowledge about a particular topic through some kind of absorption. While it is true that the text contains knowledge claims, I don't think the primary goal of reading academic literature is to gain the knowledge that it contains. Knowledge and science don't work that way. Knowledge claims consist in arguments, and arguments are a connected series of statements, that is, propositions, that attempt to establish the truth of another proposition, the conclusion. Consequently, I think the purpose of reading academic text is to interrogate, critique, and question the knowledge claims or arguments that these texts make. Science and knowledge are social practices that are central to the functioning of society. And in a way, reading is both part of the continuation as well as the transformation of such practices. Suspend your judgment for a moment and think about that next time you read something. What is the social function of this text that I am reading, and how does my reading both continue and transform this knowledge tradition? Now, who has become the judge? There are some key questions that are important to ask when reading a text. These will help you understand what is going on in the text. Like, what is the text about? Why did the author write it? What are they arguing? And how do they go about making that argument? You should have these questions in the back of your mind as you read the text. The first step to reading an academic text is to create an environment that is suitable for the purpose. The most obvious pointer is to remove sources of distraction and interruption, like your phone or open windows on your computer. And also, a clear desk equals a clear mind, so don't start reading at a cluttered workspace. Always have a pen, not just for your notes, but also for annotating the book or paper that you're reading. Buying books and printing out articles might seem costly, but reading is an investment, so start treating it as such. Before you even start reading, what can you know about the text? What is the genre of the text, for instance? This is important because before you start reading, it is good to adjust your expectations to the text. What is the text about? What is the particular topic or problem that the text deals with? Locate and read texts about the text itself. Are you reading a book by a famous author? Then see what there is about the book on Wikipedia or on other resources like reviews. Is it an article? Then read the title, abstract closely, while also looking at what else the author has published. You learn a lot of information by simply reading the bibliography and index first in, for instance, a book. Note how many of the references you knew about before you started reading. Which words had the biggest sections in the index? These will most likely be the central themes of the book. Now skim through the whole text to get an overview and feel for it. You don't have to understand everything, but it is important that you make it to the end. The goal here is to get an overall sense of the argument being made and how the author makes it. Use the chapter titles and subheadings as guiding points. It might be worth starting to write some of these down in your notes just to clarify the steps that you'll have to go through later when you read it closely. At this point, you should be able to answer some of the key questions about the text. And note, everything that you have done up until now shouldn't take much more than 30 minutes. With the rudimentary knowledge that you now have of the text, it is time to start reading slowly. Chew on the text, sentence by sentence and paragraph by paragraph. When reading normally, there are a lot of things that can be missed. This might feel a little painful as it can take a lot of time, but stick with it. And it is very rewarding to be able to succinctly give an account of the author's argument and how they make it and what is potentially wrong about it. The trick here is very much to think in two tracks. On the one hand, you have to read along with the author and where they take you. The text is their world and they have made the rules and decided on what you get to see and what you don't see. On the other hand, you are independent of this world that the text sets up. You can be suspicious about the author's priorities, questions and choices and omissions that they make, or outright disagree with the argument that they put forward. This is also commonly known as a trait of critical thinking. The reading of the text is like a meeting of minds. You engage in a kind of one-way dialogue with the author. Reading for academic purposes, therefore, demands a degree of sympathy and understanding, but not your outright submission. Practically, a close reading should result in small traces being left behind that testify to your reading. These are called markups or annotations. Forget about your marking pen for a moment. The only information it is capable of communicating is that one part of the text is more important than another, not why it is more important. When you revisit the text later, you will want to know more than that. Annotations, in contrast, consist in writing in the margins or putting marks in the text, and as such they are capable of communicating the significance of a particular passage or concept. Generally, your annotation or markup of the text should contain the following: an identification of the structure of the argument, central concepts, questions, and so on. You should underline particular important sections, connections to other literatures, scholars, and ideas, clarifications of meaning or definition of words that you had to look up, sections of the text that you don't understand or find puzzling. Much of this can be done with simple abbreviations like DF for definition, Q for question, A for an argument, and EX for an example, but you should also create your own signs by, for instance, putting square brackets around central concepts, or a punctuated double line running along the text to indicate that a long citation is being made. I'll talk more about note-taking in the next video, but the last thing that you should always do before ending your reading session is to summarize the text. Doing this right after you finish reading ensures that you have the ideas fresh in your mind. Write a paragraph or so on the back of the article or on a blank page in the book, provided of course that you own it. This way you won't have to look for it at some other place when you need it next. In conclusion, reading an academic text is not like reading any other text. You shouldn't read to merely acquire knowledge, but should think about how your reading the text is both part of the reproduction and transformation of knowledge. What you're after is the argument that the text makes, and you want to engage with that argument. To get the most out of your reading, you should create a suitable environment, study the context of the text itself, take some time to get an overview of the text, after which it is much easier to read the text closely. And lastly, always summarize the argument of the text while it is fresh in your mind. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching.